Welcome to Exploring Digital with Purr, a podcast for entrepreneurs and CEOs who want their businesses to benefit from a digital-first approach. Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of Exploring Digital with Purr. I'm here today with Tim Sparke from Congregation. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what Congregation does?
Hi everyone, my name is Tim Sparke. We founded Congregation back in 2008 as a response to quite sort of disconnected and quick fix attitudes to recruitment and training. So we offer a holistic and long-term approach in terms of improving teams. We generally sort of build better marketing teams is where we focus our efforts. And we do that sort of, we have lots of levers to pull, but we sort of focus mostly on sort of acquiring new knowledge and skills through executive search, finding brilliant people, and knowledge and development and training, where we train the people you've got to do their job even better. And we've been doing that for quite a while. They're the two sort of main planks of the business, but we also sort of have lots of other areas that we work in, sort of lots of stuff around helping teams work more effectively together, so internal collaboration, with lots of stuff about leadership and team dynamics. And then external collaboration, lots of stuff about finding brilliant partners to work with as well.
It feels like a very broad area you work with, and yet with a very kind of clear mindset about how you want to tackle those problems.
So we came from sort of two separate businesses where we had a recruitment business and a training business, and it was a quite sort of a boom in digital times, and so most companies were going through this sort of, I mean, they still are going through this sort of process of digital transformation, but it was quite a new thing at the time, and their general sort of default response to new things was, number one, we need a new head of digital, or number two, we need to run some digital training. And if you do those things in isolation, if you don't really look at the sort of business context and what the need is, where you're going to make your money, what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, then you sort of do this reactive responding to changing circumstances, but for the wrong reasons. You're doing it because everyone else is doing it rather than for a specific sort of because you've got a good strategy or a good approach yourself. And so we worked on one project where we worked together and we said, okay, we could put a new head of digital into this agency and see how they do. But what if we sort of prepare the grounds and we sort of start this cultural change program, this knowledge training program in the business first? So we're sort of getting the business ready for this new team that was going to drop in of digital comms specialists and people like that. And it worked really well. And after that, we sort of merged the businesses and we've been going ever since then.
It's fascinating. So out of interest, when you're looking at a team at a new client, existing client, and working out what needs to happen there, how much of it comes down to looking at the people and where does the disconnect come between where you're looking at people and then the systems in place within that team as well?
So I think, I mean, obviously you have to look at both. We often start, we're called in for one side of the business, so we may be called in to run some training, and then it sort of exposes the fact that they're lacking some key skills in terms of the people. And when you go through those sort of discovery phases, you tend to sort of unearth, some diagnostic issues that maybe they weren't aware of themselves. And actually the brief changes and you sort of shift halfway through. But I think it's a question of looking at the people, the knowledge and the culture and the processes, and just assessing those as best you can. And there's no sort of magic bullet. It's not a particularly quick sort of process that you go for. We can sort of do it pretty quickly, but it tends to be as you work with the business organically, you tend to get to know them better. And then you sort of start to be able to prescribe the right response, because a lot of the time things are moving very fast and it's very hard for people, when they're flying the plane and trying to fix the plane at the same time, it's quite hard for them to actually be able to work out what they really need. And half of our job is to go in and help them work out what the actual answer is. And the beauty of having a sort of multi-pronged business is we're not trying to fill lots of bums on seats in a recruitment sense. We're not trying to run lots of training programs. It allows us to go, you know what, this isn't right. Putting a person in here is not going to fix this issue. What you need to do is you've got this brilliant person over there. You can build a team around them, and we can help you with that sort of knowledge development and that whole sort of development piece as well.
Do you find that's a difficult thing to cultivate with clients, that it's not just a quick fix and it is thinking for the long term with any of these decisions? It's not, if they've come to you for oh, we need a new head of digital. But what you're actually going to come away with is a 12-month plan for how you address the balance across the team and the training dynamic or whatever it is that your recommendation is. Do you ever feel that like there's a disconnect between what someone comes to you for and what you give them in return?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's a sensitive line that you need to sort of walk along, where you can't be too sort of. And obviously, the best work comes from the best relationships, and the more you know someone, the more they trust you, the more you have sort of the permission to be slightly more radical. But I think there's a danger in a lot of when it comes to sort of any kind of project that has technology at the heart, or people that technology is a really important component of it. I think that the whole issue with our industry is that generally what happens is people massively oversell the potential, and the reality is often not quite as exciting as what's sold in. So everyone ends up just really depressed and sort of just really upset at the end of it. Whereas if people were slightly more realistic about what they were selling in, and they weren't promising the earth, then actually you could probably achieve, people feel a lot better about it. And that's, that's not just true of what we do or sort of technology and business sense, but it's true with every sort of technology that's ever invented. They all go through this Gartner hype cycle of massive overinflated expectations of what it can achieve. And, sort of thinking about what people are thinking about AI at the moment. And then when they try and apply, robot process automation and AI in their businesses, it doesn't solve all the problems they think it will. And if we were just a bit more, what are we looking at the moment? The big one that we're knocking up against a lot is this idea of marketing automation. So automating every process in your marketing stack. Again, there's a really good place to do that around, your sort of DSPs and your DMPs and things like that. It makes loads of sense, but actually, we're not talking about trying to replace people. That's not the point of this. What we're trying to do is take the really boring, mundane tasks away from people.
Completely.
And allow people
It's about efficiency.
Yeah, and effectiveness as well, of just people being able to do what they're good at rather than really sort of, dull, repeatable things. So I think it's a real... Yeah, you need to get to the trust point where people actually listen to what you say. But there's the tricky part, and I'm sure you guys come up against this a lot, which is just thinking about how, if you go in and say, this is really nuanced, it may work, it may not work, then you're not going to win against someone who's going, if you do this, this, and this, then you're going to be fine. And it could be one of the management consultants, whoever it is, they sell based on this idea of certainty, whereas we're often quite open about the fact that we haven't done this before. There's no guarantees.
Yeah. It is a discovery process that you're selling, not just a solution that a consultancy firm traditionally sells.
But people love complexity and they love certainty. And so if you make things seem really complex and confusing, they love that. And then if you give them a sense of, if they do all those very complex things, then they're going to get them. And they love that sense of certainty. And I think we sort of sometimes, probably we're not obsessed with scale or sort of selling ourselves in all of the time, but we'll often go in and try and mop up after those projects haven't worked. And we'll go in and sort of try and help out when they've been through that process and they work out, okay, that's not, that's maybe not the right answer for us.
Yeah, I think my brief career in professional services has taught me a few things that I like about that world and other things that I like to change. And I think certainly, yes, selling certainty with any big implementation and when you're relying on, I guess with what you sell, you're relying on people who are inherently unreliable. You're hoping that you can corral these people together to get us to a certain output, but it's by no means a guarantee. But I think this is where you guys evidently do a good job of selling or demonstrating your expertise and how you've achieved this in the past. Do you think there's a particular case study or sort of a way of demonstrating this that's worked for you well?
I think people always love, blue chip companies and some of the biggest companies and the most established companies in the world. And I think, it's good to have them on your resume and to have the quotes and the data behind the work you do with them. That certainly helps. And again, often we'll go into a business in quite a small capacity. And, we've worked with huge global companies where we'll go in and run a 2-day, digital marketing workshop for quite junior marketing teams, and they'll say that's great, but my boss doesn't get it. And then you sort of move up to mid-level management. You run a sort of leadership and change with a bit of sort of technology and marketing in it, and they go, that's great, but my boss doesn't get it. And then you end up at the top sort of 20 people in the business running a sort of digital leadership program and sort of doing sort of coaching with the CEO and the CFO and things like that. And I think that's always a really nice way of sort of addressing these businesses, because you're proving as you work your way through it that you are adding value at every level of the business. And I think that.
Do you think it's more of a challenge in the digital world or digital marketing world, particularly where things are so fast paced? It's not like if you're a lawyer and you make it up to partner level that the law has changed so drastically in your career that you are no longer as applicable or as useful on the front line. Do you think it's a particular challenge to a technical world?
What, for leaders or for us?
For leaders who've grown up through the ranks, still understanding enough of the nuts and bolts of the day to day of what they're asking people to do. And do you think there's also a secondary challenge that because they're no longer as connected with what it is that the people on the front line do, that they're more swayed by what is new and interesting and what they've read about as the latest thing, and as a result are more likely to go, oh, AI, blockchain, VR, and pick on the buzzwords?
So there's kind of two default responses, and both of them are slightly wrong. Which is I don't want to look like a dinosaur, therefore I'm going to embrace all of everything that anyone mentions around, blockchain and AI for the next 3 months. And, I've seen a presentation about it. That's what we're going to do. I've been told that's the future. And there's this sort of, everyone's they've all got their iPads and they've all got their Apple Watches, and it's like, whoa, they really get digital. And it's just not about technology. It's sort of 90%. Everyone thinks it's 90% technology and 10% people. But in reality, we sort of look at it as being sort of 90% people, how they behave, how they interact, how they work, and what the culture of the business is like, and probably 10%, the tech stack they're using, which, sometimes is 20, 30 years old anyway. And actually the people who are doing the interesting business have just created their own tech stack on the side and completely sort of circumvented the rest of the business. So you've got people who are sort of desperately trying to jump onto everything and to seem like they're on top of it. But obviously that leaves the business in a calamitous state, because then what they're going to do is they're just going to do lots of things for the wrong reason. The immune system of the business is then going to react against it, and they're going to become even more risk averse, for the next 5 years, because they tried that thing once and it didn't work. And the reality, as we know with technology, sort of hype cycles and technology cycles in general, it's not really what the idea is. It's the idea, and the timing is everything. You've got the same app that was released virtually month by month for 4 years, and there was one app for 1 month at the right time where suddenly it took off and consumers were ready and the tech press was ready, and the culture of something happened culturally to make it really significant. I would think about House Party at the moment, or the move to Zoom at the moment. And obviously it's a horrendous time what's happening at the moment, but this is probably forcing through more digital transformation in most businesses than any initiative that we've done, or change programs or digital transformation programs have done, because the culture is ready. And I think
it's funny how the number of companies I've spoken to who had avoided putting systems into their business for a long time, and then within a week had to find very innovative solutions to push it all through, and suddenly it happened. Necessity is the mother of invention sometimes.
But it's also, people don't change unless they have to, and you have to give them a really good reason to change. And that's either got to be a selfish reason, which is it'll make me happier, richer, better, healthier, whatever it happens to be, or it can be about the common good, which is also sort of a powerful motivator of just applying people's basic sort of
so Maslow needs,
and then the other approach for leaders is where they sort of they do sort of hold back, and they don't want to get involved because they feel exposed and they feel this is a complete new world. I don't understand it. I'm the wrong generation, and I just think that's a massive cop out. Most of my favorite thinkers when it comes to technology are, like Henry Jenkins at MIT. They're old people with years of experience, and they're not millennials or digital natives or anything like that, because the reality is
the things in the E-Myth or in the Mythical Man Month, those principles, early software engineering principles or tech principles, haven't really changed, and they're still the Bibles.
Yeah, and so there's people who are sort of afraid of, and I think there's this thing where they're so obsessed with the new, especially in marketing terms. People are completely obsessed with, getting on top of, house parties. So house party is probably going to become the marketer's next big thing for the next, 6 months or whatever it is. And they'll all be, what's your house party strategy and stuff like that. And the reality is, marketing is both an art and a science. So the science is, the core foundational crafting sort of principles of marketing, understanding consumers and understanding positioning and understanding your market, so that you can come up with a proposition and an idea and understand what is it about your product that is going to be relevant to people. Then you can communicate those strengths to the right people and hopefully sell more things. And that's backed up by data and research and all of those sort of things. And then the art is the sort of creativity and the channels and the tactics that change all of the time. And they do change every 6 months, but actually those core foundational skills are still as important as ever. So it's how to blend the best of the old with the new. Yes, some things change and some things don't. And we tend to, as a species, focus far more on the things that are changing than, if you look at Jeff Bezos, and he says everyone's obsessed with change, and actually, he says I'm obsessed with what's not going to change. And he said this for years. People will always want a good selection of products, quite a good price, delivered quickly. That's it. If I know that, then that's my business idea.
You're absolutely right. And in a world where everyone's going, as you say, what's your house party strategy for the next 6 months? But they've still not got goal tracking working properly on their main website. Yeah. And you think, just get the basics right, please. Use this opportunity to do some housekeeping. Use this opportunity where you're not waylaid with operational business as much, to just ensure that everything you think you've got actually is doing what it's meant to be doing. I was interested to talk briefly about tech stacks. You mentioned that is part of what you look at. How often do you look at a team and see, right, there might be some legacy systems that could be replaced with new cloud systems, for example, or it could be that they are using a bit of a hodgepodge of both, but really they in some circumstances they might benefit from building something custom. Do you think there's any particular trends that you see, or in general, can you advise most teams that really a good use of what's out there on the market is going to solve most of their problems?
So I don't profess to be an expert in those sort of areas. So generally our approach at that point would be to introduce them to, one of our networks or one of the people in our networks who can sort of help with that sort of thing. Even our own internal marketing tech stack is quite bewildering in many respects, of just sort of choosing the right provider and getting slightly sort of itchy feet with the ones you're working with. So that's most of what we would do would be to do with finding them a phenomenal practitioner who's already doing it, and then just putting them in touch. And that's the beauty of the congregation. There's only 4 of us, but we've got this amazing, by dint of the training, network, by dint of the recruitment, we've got this incredible access to some great sort of tech and strategic talent. We'll generally put people in touch with that. And then I suppose the other thing we end up doing a lot of is trying to explain how that works to everyone in the business, so they start to use it. Because if it's just,
does that come into how you when you're training a team? Is the use of a system a big part of the training, or is it secondary to the working cohesively as a team?
It's a huge part of it. So from a marketing perspective, you want everyone at least to know what it does. They don't need to know how it works, but they need to sort of not be afraid of the language, understand the sort of, and a lot of what we do is sort of just translation between the digital tech team and the rest of the brand and marketing teams, and just try and agree a common language there so that everyone's fairly sort of happy and clear on what people are talking about, because it's again coming back to that idea of sort of selling complexity. A lot of people really exploit the fact that often non-technical people don't, they just glaze over when people start to talk about technology solutions, and that's when confusion arises and people sort of buy the wrong things or make the wrong move, and to quite amazingly sort of calamitous degrees. And so I think it's just, one of our roles is just really sort of helping people understand exactly what everything does and why they should use it and when to use it. And if they don't really understand it, who the best person to speak to is. And I think that's a really sort of, that's becoming more and more important. It's not, everyone used to, for the first sort of 5 years, it was teaching everyone how Google did it or how Facebook do it. And everyone's evolving their own little sort of processes, their own cultures and their own technologies, but then sort of codifying those within the business and helping everyone understand them is a really important point, not just from an onboarding perspective, but also even for people who've been there, because naturally, digital teams will often silo that stuff off themselves and it's their domain, and they don't really like to sort of share too much of it with other people, which is quite ironic based on the sort of, the founding sort of principles of digital cultures and collaboration and things like that. But we see that quite a bit.
I think the really important thing there is that people see the ownership of these cloud systems and tools that they are using as a business as not something that's the preserve of IT. That there's got to be understanding and uptake of this across the team and people who are experts in it within the team. And it's not just put in a call to IT and they'll give you some answers on it.
Yeah, and that's the flaw with the whole sort of head of digital job or chief digital officer. It's like if you are sort of creating a separate department for these things, you're out, so you're allowing everyone else off the hook, and they can all say, well, we're just going to give it to the digital person, whereas actually we just fundamentally believe it's if you are, especially in marketing, which is a very tech-powered discipline today, if you're working in marketing, you need to own, you need to have an opinion, you need to have a voice around all of these sort of technologies and projects, because it's going to become, it's a fundamental part of your job today, but it's going to become even more so in the future.
So what do you think the opportunity is for Friday Club in these times of more remote working and social distancing? How are you going to get people together in the same way? Is it going to be Zoom or house party? Are you looking at these options?
Yeah, what's our house party strategy? I don't. Yeah, I think we'll probably
taking some of your own medicine here.
Yeah, it's so true. I don't know. I think we'll probably start to think about running some virtual events. It has held, we have been quite UK based, and it'd be really nice to involve startups from all over as well. But there's something.
It was something that struck me about Friday Club. It's Friday Club London. And why does it need to be?
No, it's true. I mean, it's because that's where we all are. I mean, it's a not-for-profit, so it's not a it's not something that we've ever really thought. I did run one in Sao Paulo a few years ago. We did. I was over there doing some training, so we had a Friday Club in Brazil, which was great. But we haven't done too many places so far. So I think the opportunity to do some virtual stuff, but I need to catch up with the rest of the team before I can commit to anything, because it's not my goal.
Well, hopefully the new site that we built for Friday Club can help support whatever it is that you choose to do next.
Amazing.
Lovely. And just coming back to your earlier point, I guess, about how don't lock away those digital skills within a head of digital role or within that department. It's so much part of our thinking nowadays that and part of our identity and our ethos that we don't want digital to be something that's locked away in marketing, or that technology is something that the IT department know about, and it has to be something that's cultural across a business, or at least right now it's going to need to be, because how else does business keep going? And I think the other side of whatever we're going through right now is it's going to have to involve so much more digital adoption across businesses, not just at a marketing level, because how else do you operate? And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how we ride this out, and what digital inspires people to do across their businesses. So yeah, it's an exciting time in that regard, although horrible in others. Go on, let's finish with some top tips. What would be your biggest recommendations, I guess, for companies looking to build more cohesive marketing teams?
I think just often you need it's not really a top tip, but you need to have a clue of where you're going. You need to set a bit of a vision and spend some time really thinking about why you're doing this and what the end goal is. I think if you're too tactical about it, it tends to, you just have this stop-start process all the way through. But, setting a sort of, 2-year vision about what you're doing and why you're doing it is super important. The tactics will take care of themselves. And then you can start thinking about, what are the cultural levers we want to pull? How can we incentivize people to start to sort of embrace this? Because it's just, people are, they don't choose change dramatically. Everyone says they like change, but no one really likes change. We hate it. And but actually when it's forced on us, it can be quite a good thing. And it can be quite interesting, but it's not our default sort of human response. So I think it's just making sure that everyone understands what you're doing and why, and then just, helping them become part of the process, so you can actually sort of involve them in the sort of the ideas, so it doesn't feel too top down or too sort of instigated from above. I think the other thing is just to, especially at the moment, just pause, just have a think. You've probably got a lot of initiatives that are happening, and one will be run by HR, and one will be run by marketing, and one will be run by the IT team, and just get everything up on a wall. Let's see what's happening. Let's prioritize which ones matter, which ones don't. And it's probably, so there's a lot of fatigue around this sort of area. So just helping people with that. For me, there's a huge benefit about just getting people really personally engaged with this stuff. So just sort of starting to add little elements to meetings, or to the company of just introducing dashboards, or presenting data in new and interesting ways, as really sort of a default way of working. And then I suppose just thinking about, everyone says they want to be more experimental and be more open to risk, but it's just really start looking at yourself and look at do you really? How do you cope when people fail and when projects don't go well? What do you do about that? Do you try and sweep it under the carpet, or do you try and learn from it, maybe celebrate it, and look at what you can sort of, what learnings you can take from it? And so I think they're not technical things at all, but it's just thinking about the culture,
organizational culture.
Yeah, I think that for me is the key thing, but also sort of making sure that everyone's got the right technology, that they're all using the right apps, and that you are using some pretty good sort of best-in-class systems. I think Zoom's doing quite well out of this whole process at the moment, and even Microsoft Teams, I've used it a bit, but it sort of works. It's better than email and Outlook. So
yeah, it's amazing how far Microsoft has come in that regard. I mean, it doesn't feel that long ago it was Skype for Business or something. It was about the limit of what they could offer.
It is an amazing transformation that he's taken them through. I think is it compared to where they were, and they tell a really good story about it. I'm not saying that some of it's not PR, but it's pretty incredible when you think of where they were around 5 years ago to where they are now. I think that's it's really hard coming up with good examples of sustained digital transformation, especially in old traditional businesses. And you couldn't say Microsoft's that old and that traditional, but there's not many brilliant examples of it.
Yeah.
But that for me is
they're turning into one. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Completely. Brilliant. Well, look, Tim, it's fantastic speaking with you, and best of luck with what Congregation have been doing over the next few months. And look forward to speaking again. Thanks everyone for listening. Speak to you all again soon. Thanks for joining. Remember to subscribe and follow us, and to share today's insights with other businesses who want to stay relevant in a digital-first world.